Two small, wealthy North Atlantic countries sit right on the edge of Europe. Both trade almost entirely with the European Union. Both follow most of its rules. Both are inside its passport-free travel zone, and neither one is a member. In August, Iceland voted on whether to restart the conversation about changing that, and the fight isn't really about whether to be in Europe. Iceland already is, by every practical measure. The fight is about which of two very different ways of being in Europe is worth more. Call them what they are. Option 1 is full membership, a seat at the table, a vote on the rules, a commissioner, members of the European Parliament, and the euro eventually. Option 2 is what Norway has and what Iceland has now, the European Economic Area. You join the single market, you take the rules, you pay into the budget, you get the free movement of goods, services, people, and capital. What you don't get is a vote. That distinction has a nickname in Norway that tells you everything. They call it fax democracy. The rules arrive from Brussels, you implement them, and nobody in Brussels needed your opinion first. Norway has adopted an enormous body of EU legislation over the decades with no vote on any of it. No commissioner, no MEPs. Norwegians have twice been asked whether to become full members, in 1972 and again in 1994, and twice said no, both times narrowly. So they've spent 50 years choosing to follow rules they can't write, deliberately, with their eyes open. Which sounds absurd until you look at what they're protecting. And this is where the head-to-head actually starts, because the case for each side comes down to three things. First, fish. This is not a side issue for Iceland, it's close to the whole argument. Fishing and seafood are a huge share of what the country sells to the world, and the waters around it are among the richest in the North Atlantic. Full EU membership means the common fisheries policy, quotas set collectively, access negotiated collectively, and a say for countries with fleets that would very much like to be in those waters. Iceland fought an actual series of confrontations with Britain over exactly this in the 20th century, with ships ramming each other over where the line sat, handing the setting of that line to a body where Iceland would be one of the smallest voices is, to a lot of Icelanders, not a trade-off. It's the thing you'd be trading away. Second, the currency, and this is the argument that runs the other direction. Iceland has the krona, a currency belonging to a country of under 400,000 people. In 2008, that turned out to matter enormously. The banking system collapsed spectacularly, the krona fell through the floor, and the country ended up living behind capital controls, restrictions on moving your own money out, for years afterward. A very small currency in a very open economy is a permanent exposure. The euro is the offer on the other side of that. Stability, borrowing costs that don't swing on sentiment about a tiny currency, and an end to being a rounding error in global markets. That collapse is precisely why Iceland applied to join in the first place, back in 2009, when the wreckage was still smoking. Third, rule-taking versus rule-making. Under the EEA, Iceland already implements a large slice of single market law. So one framing says membership costs almost nothing extra in sovereignty. You're taking the rules regardless. You may as well get a vote on them. The counter-framing says the opposite. The EEA is the good deal precisely because it's partial. You take the market rules and skip the rest. No common fisheries policy, no common agricultural policy, no obligation to move toward deeper political union. On this reading, a vote in the room is a poor exchange for the freedoms you'd hand over to get it, especially when your vote is one of the smallest there. There's a fourth thing that rarely gets argued about openly, which is the bill. The EEA isn't free. Members contribute substantial sums toward European cohesion programs and pay to participate in the various schemes they've opted into. So the picture of the Norway model as a clever way of getting the market without the costs isn't quite right. You pay, you comply, and you're outside the room where the terms are set. Whether that's a bargain or a humiliation depends entirely on how much you think the room is worth. And it's worth being honest about how much the room actually is worth to a country this size. Voting weight in the EU is tied substantially to population, and Iceland's population would make it the smallest member state by a wide margin, smaller than Malta. The realistic influence isn't a decisive vote. It's a seat, a voice, a commissioner, and the ability to build alliances with other small states and be in the corridor when the shape of a proposal is still soft. That's not nothing. It is also not the veto some of the argument implies. So what changed since 2015 when Iceland walked away from its own application? Partly, the wreckage healed. The urgency of 2009 was a country whose financial system had just detonated. By 2015, the economy had recovered strongly, tourism was booming, and the argument that the euro was a lifeboat had lost most of its force. But partly the world outside got less comfortable. Being a very small country with no vote is a fine arrangement when the neighbourhood is calm and predictable. It's a different proposition when European security is contested, when trade policy is being used as leverage, and when the rules governing your main export market can shift without anyone needing to ask you. There's also a quieter point that rarely makes the headlines. The EEA deal was struck when the EU was smaller and did less. Everything the EU has grown into since, the vast regulatory reach over data, digital markets, product standards, climate rules, arrives in Iceland the same way it always has, by fax. The scope of what you're accepting without a vote has expanded enormously. The deal didn't change. What the deal covers did. So the verdict, honestly, is that these aren't two answers to one question. They're two different bets. Full membership is a bet that influence over the rules is worth more than control of specific things: fish, farming, the pace of integration. The Norway model is a bet that keeping a handful of things entirely yours is worth more than a small vote on everything. Iceland is unusual in that it has genuinely lived one and formally applied for the other, then changed its mind, and is now asking whether to change it back. And the August vote settles none of it. It was about whether to reopen accession talks, a vote to start a conversation, not to join anything. Even a clear yes leads to years of negotiation, and then, presumably, another vote on whatever comes back. Which leaves the question underneath both models, and it's not really about Iceland at all. If you have to follow the rules either way, what is a vote on them actually worth? And what would you give up to get one?